Are you ready for the Olympics? Well, I'll be honest about this. I was about mixed hype and weirded out for this one back when they confirmed that more sequels were being made, which, if I recall correctly, in the Alpha and Omega 2 DVD bonus features, where they confirmed they were going to make 3 more in the future that time, which I decided to still give it a shot like I always do, even as a big fan myself for the franchise. We see the Packs doing their performance as that gave the pups the idea to do it as well. This is where we see Fleet, played by Jesse McCartney, but some reason in Wikipedia it says he voiced him. If you don't believe me, look at his filmography. But in the credits, however, it shows he's voiced by Mike Jacobs. He later gets to meet the trio for the first time and informs him about the Wolf Games. We see more log sliding moments again between Humphrey and Mooch, which now Mooch makes his return next after Salty, which he's now played by Chris Smith instead of Eric Price. But for some reason, we never heard anything about Shaky since we had Salty in the second movie to make his return. Now we see Brent, the bear cub, makes his debut, played by Mike Jacobs, and Agnes, his protector slash friend slash agent slash anything else, whatever it is, played by Mila Lee, that makes her debut, as well as the pups' first time meets them. Back then, when I first time saw the trailer, I thought it was the same bear cub from the first movie, and I thought he has puberty for his deep voice. But now we realize it's a recolor on reused character models. Agnes, however, we find out she can go very fast, but she has her limit if she overuses her speed as she goes out of control. And we found out Brent has a quote-unquote bird issues, but he actually has a phobia of birds. And we also found out Kate was absent in this movie when Humphrey mentioned about she's out for hunting trip. Humphrey decides to train them all like Great Snail Race mixed with Rocky training reference, even training Brent on getting over his phobia of birds. Talk about all-day training. Then we later see Nars, played by David Olage, where he is also training his team for the games, which turns out he's actually Fleet's father. The games was only the start for the competition for every single pup, except we see the whole turn right to the left reference here on how Claudette did her performance for the first time, which, in all honesty, I actually like that moment, even how it references Cars on how Fleet tries to do the turn right to the left. But we know how she learned that trick as she gets it from Kate, and we even know about that Nars once lost to Kate at the games from the past. In all honesty, that actually got me mind blown. Right? We got to know a little more lore about the past and everything. Fleet's sister confesses as she wanted to quit the games as she was injured when telling her dad about it. So Nars decides to offer the finals for his son, Fleet, to race against Claudette for the games, and then Claudette accepts the challenge, then begins their training. Speaking of training, Claudette decides to help Fleet on how she did her turn right to the left trick, but he still failed. Then later, Nars begins to get disappointed at Fleet, but he couldn't resist it on not hitting his own son while he was in anger. And then Claudette begins to feel bad for him when she was watching the whole thing. Kate finally appears in this movie, which this was almost towards the end of the movie, And this is one of the reasons why it was bad, because of Kate being absent in this movie, then later appears so late that's towards the end of this film. The finals begin between Claudette versus Fleet at the games, but suddenly Humphrey begins to notice something on her actions is that she's beginning to fall in love with Fleet, but Humphrey refuses her to fall in love with him that early and to just focus on the games more. Fleet fails at the turn right to the left trick again. Then finally it went successful thanks to Claudette's help. And as soon as they got to the finish line, they end up got a tie. Nars begins to be proud of Fleet the next, even after all the things he's done to him, and then Claudette and Fleet are officially a thing. I'll admit, this one was alright, but one thing what kind of bugged me was the reused models by recoloring every character, as you can tell by recolored Claudette, recolored Stinky, even recolored Marcel. As for Nars, well, I think he's a recolored background wolf from the first movie. But now that I mentioned it, in the first movie from the Alpha Territory, we see random pups with the bone. That pretty much was the first model of in the first movie. Back then, I first thought the trio were new original designs, but later they were all recolors. But I'll give them credit for the sequels, even trying for when creating the pups. I can understand why many people say this one was horrible, especially for Brent's role and for Kate being absent through the whole film until almost towards the end she returns. But then again, this was an alright movie. I would say just see the other ones if you don't really like this one or not. But also it does have one of those it runs in the family next generation for on Deja Vu on the falling in love with a different wolf from a different pack. But yeah, this one was just an alright movie. But we'll just have to get to the next movie now. And this one, honestly, is actually my favorite sequel. So we'll get to the next video about that.